everyone. My name is Mary Summers. I am the Regional Preparedness Manager for the Kentucky Region American Red Cross. And today we are going to be talking about our Lifetone deaf and hard of hearing bed shaker alarm and how to install those. So you may have seen one of these boxes. This is the box for our Lifetone deaf and hard of hearing alarm. It's a specialized bed shaker alarm. You see the little pod that's down here that goes underneath the mattress or the pillow for a resident. And this syncs up to working smoke alarms in the home. So that way if they're sleeping, maybe they don't have their hearing aids in, perhaps they are completely deaf but they're asleep so they're more vulnerable. This will shake and vibrate the bed if there is a fire, so that way the resident can be alerted and escape safely. So we're going to talk about just a quick walkthrough of how to get these installed. But before that, I wanted to do just a brief introduction to why and how we get these alarms and how the process works for requesting them. So when we go into a home to do our 10-year lithium-ion battery smoke alarm installs, we have a Service Acknowledgement Form. This is to be filled out in its entirety all the way down to the red. The red you leave blank. That's for administrative purposes. But there are some questions here in this section for the initial assessment that ask about disabilities in the household. And this is a good opportunity to ask if there's anyone that lives there that may be deaf or hard of hearing or could potentially benefit from this extra protection that the Lifetone alarms offer. If the residents do say yes, they or someone that lives there in the home would benefit from this product, there is a green deaf and hard of hearing bed shaker alarm application. So if there is this application, we want to fill this out also in its entirety down to the red section. Again, leave this blank. This is for the online reporting. Here we want to make sure we have the address, ask the residents some questions about how many people in the home would need one of the alarms, if there's a better day or time to come back and visit those, and if they prefer to have an interpreter service available as well. We can work on reaching out to some of our partners to provide an interpreter if they need someone that can do American Sign Language. So we want, again, their contact information, just like on the blue Service Acknowledgement Form here. We do want to have their contact information, whether we're texting, calling another resident in the home that can communicate via phone, or if it's a TTY phone, or whether we want to send them an email. So we ask for their preferred, we ask to get as much information as we can, and then we want to know who the bed shakers are for. There are enough spaces here for up to 3 residents in the home to each receive their own Lifetone deaf and hard of hearing alarm. There's more people that live in the home that are also needing the bed shakers. Just do a second one of these. But that way, in case the resident who is deaf or hard of hearing is different than the homeowner, we can put their names here so we can have all of the information needed. So part of the assumption of getting these deaf and hard of hearing alarms is that while we were in the home, we inspected and or installed the current smoke alarms. So we need the home to have current working smoke alarms in order to have the deaf and hard of hearing alarm installed. The Lifetone DHH alarm is not a flasher that's in the hallway. It sits next to the bed with a piece that goes underneath the pillow or the mattress that will activate once it is signaled by a working smoke alarm in the home that there is fire or there's smoke that's going to activate this. It will sync to the Lifetone deaf and hard of hearing alarm, activate that bed shaker piece, and then be able to provide safety there for the residents. So that's what we're doing today, is kind of how to get that installed. But that's why it requires 2 visits. So we go in once, we install this, we complete the application here to ensure that we request these pieces of equipment from our national partners and our national team. They will request them, they send it back to us with an address and an alarm. So we're not going to get extra alarms, we get an alarm for every address requesting them. So it's really important to have that green application form done. So let's fast forward. We've been in a home, we installed some new 10-year alarms. The residents said that they would like to have one of the bed shaker alarms, maybe because they take their hearing aids out at night. We filled out that green form. You worked with your local disaster program manager or your local preparedness lead. We got that information entered into the online portal. National received it. They shipped us our Lifetone alarm, and now we have it and we're ready to go back and visit that resident again to install our Lifetone alarm. So I've done a little bit of prep work, but you'll start with this box and you open it up, and from that box you pull out another box. One thing that's in here, it's a rolled up user's guide. So if you're ever out in the field and you're at someone's home and you forgot a couple of the steps or want to make sure you're doing it right, feel free to open this up. Also make sure the resident has it and knows that it exists in case they ever have any questions about it as well. Also in that box, you will find some giant batteries. These are our backup batteries that are going to go into our Lifetone alarm. They do have a plastic wrapping on them. Make sure you take it off because they're not going to work and it's not going to be safe if we stuff a bunch of plastic into our equipment. And then we have the Lifetone alarm. So it looks just like this. We have our display screen with the protectant on it. I'm not going to take this protectant off yet, but make sure that you do when you're installing the alarm. Up top, this is going to sound. If the alarm goes off, this is going to make noise and it's going to talk, and we'll hear that in a minute. But the sensor is also inside of here. So this is where the sensor is going to pick up that noise from the 10-year alarm. And it's going to be in there and to activate. We also have some on-off for our alarm clock, so this can be used as an alarm clock, and then how to set the display and things like that. So first thing you want to do is you want to take off your back little door, and you want to get your batteries installed. Now once there is any type of power to this, whether it's battery or whether you have it plugged into an outlet, it's going to start and ask you to work through the process of getting it activated. So before I do that, I want to make sure all my pieces are together. So you're going to put this in a resident's bedroom, close to their bed, preferably on like a nightstand table. And again, you want to have an outlet nearby because it does need to be plugged in. The backup batteries are there in case there is a power outage. The alarm would still go off in the case of a fire. Another piece that you will find in your second box, the second box meaning the internal box, not a separate box, is your bed shaker pod. So it almost looks like a computer mouse, a little bit more round, and it's got a power piece to it. You want to take your Lifetone alarm, turn it over, you'll see a red button. Underneath the red button, but above the alarm power cord, is a little pocket that's in there. That's the little hole that gets covered up if it's not plugged in. That's where you're going to install your bed shaker power piece. So make sure it's all the way in there. And then you will want to have this piece close enough to where the resident sleeps on the bed that it can go in between a mattress and box spring. It could go underneath a fitted sheet if they're a little bit of a heavier sleeper, so they want it to be closer to them. You could put it under the fitted sheet up near the head of the bed, like underneath the pillow, so then they don't feel it. Or you can put it right underneath the pillow on top of the mattress. So there's a little bit of leeway there for what the resident prefers. So slide that in, plug your alarm into the outlet.
Check batteries.
And it's telling me to check my batteries because I've got one battery left to put in the back. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And it will yell at you the whole time if you didn't do something right.
Press the red button to begin.
And as you heard, it says press the red button to begin. The red button is here. But I want to make sure that my partner that's with me during my home install is ready to go with the 10-year smoke alarm. So once we press that red button, we will have to test this alarm. We will have to test this alarm to activate. So make sure you have one of your 10-year alarms and your partner standing next to it. Make sure that it's activated and ready to go. These should already be good to go from that first visit, but it's always good to test. So we've got my partner at my alarm. I've got my partner at my alarm, and I'm going to press the red button, and it's going to take a minute to try to take in the ambient noise, and it's going to tell you when to test, and that's when we want to test our 10-year alarm that's on the wall or the ceiling. So let's go ahead and press that.
Press the red button to begin. Please wait.
Please wait. So it'll say test right here. And I don't know that you can hear this in the video, but there's a high-pitched noise that gets a little louder. And it's going to get louder and louder and louder until it asks you to test the 10-year alarm. It's ready.
At the tone, test your smoke alarm.
So we want to test the smoke alarm when you hear the beep. So you press and hold.
Fire, get out. Fuego, salga. Now set the clock.
So that's it. Once you test the alarm, once you test the 10-year alarm, this one will absorb that sound, recognize the pitch and the tone of it basically is what it does. So that way it's synced up and ready to go. It will yell fire in English and in Spanish. It lights up here, and I hope you could see or hear this vibrate. It's nice to let the resident feel that, whether you have them hold it or lay down in bed once you have it placed and you test it. It's good to have them have an idea of what that feeling is, so that way they will recognize it in the case of an emergency. So then you're able to set the clock. There's the alarm, you get to set the date, use your buttons up at the top just like a typical alarm clock, and you'll set the clock here, make sure everything's good to go. You can turn the alarm on and off, it'll all indicate here on the front. So that's it, it's now installed and it's ready to go. One of the questions I've had come up a few times from residents is, I tested my smoke alarms on my 6 months, when I changed my clock, I do it bi-yearly. I tested these, but my Lifetone did not go off. We did a little bit of research and talked to a couple fire departments about why that might be. These Lifetone ones have to have a certain number of sequences to activate. So while it's synced up, just testing the alarm, it's not going to continue to test the Lifetone alarm. Unless this keeps going off, such as in the case of a fire where it goes off continuously, the Lifetone will not activate. However, you can continue to test your Lifetone alarm using that red button. So, long story short, sort of, what we want you to do is make sure the resident understands that when they test this alarm, this will not go off automatically. But we do want them to test it twice a year as well when they test these by using that test button. And it will do the same thing that it did for us just now. We don't have to resync the sounds up, but when you test it, it will go off. It will yell fire in English and Spanish. The vibrating disc will activate, and it'll confirm that it's still working. So the testing of this does not test this. We want to test them separately twice a year still. So now that you've got your clock set, everything's good to go, your alarms are in, the last piece of the puzzle is you still have to do another service acknowledgement form. It's a new day with a new service provided to this resident. So we need one more of these to match the services provided. So in this case, up here at the top, peek around, up here at the top where it says number of 10-year alarms installed, unless you put any new ones in on the same day that you did the Lifetone alarm, and there's cases where you might have to do that. Maybe they finished their basement and now there's a living space and they need an extra alarm. but only if you put in new ones today, on the same day of the second visit for the Lifetone alarm, do you put a number there. But the second line here, the DHH alarm installed, it says the number of new bed shaker alarms installed and tested. That's where we want to make sure we document that there was one or possibly more installed. The second and last piece that's a little bit weird on the service acknowledgement forms is down here after you do the initial assessment. In the additional notes, the last piece of information we need is the serial number for the Lifetone alarm that you installed today. So on the bottom of the Lifetone alarm, there's a gray sticker, kind of a silver sticker, and the serial number is right up at the top. They typically start with the letters AC. So, and then there's about 9 digits afterwards. We want to make sure that we put that serial number on our service acknowledgement form, so that way if there's ever an issue with the alarms, we can track which residents received which alarms. So if we can identify if it's a bad grouping of alarms, we can get those replaced right away. And just put that right here in the additional notes. Make sure you and the resident sign and date the form. And again, fill it out in its entirety all the way down to the red box. Leave the red box blank, as that'll be done once we get the information put into the national portal. And that is the Lifetone Deaf and Hard of Hearing alarm installation. Quick how-to. So never underestimate the power of the user's guide. If you have any additional questions, look to it. Feel free to get a hold of me or contact your local disaster program manager. Hope that helps, and thanks for helping us save lives.